We're gonna be talking about our boy. How do you even say his name?
Huo
Huo Qubing. I'm just gonna call him HQ for the rest of the video. If you guys know the trend of Rise of Kingdoms, the latest commander that we got was Liang, and the way to get his head is from the Wheel of Fortune. And what you kind of see with the pattern when they release two commanders at a time is the open field centric commander is in the Wheel of Fortune, and the rallying garrison commander tends to be through the Mightiest Governor. So what I'm predicting, this guy will be available through the wheel. So in case you guys didn't know, Wheel of Fortune, this is just speculation, but the best valuable Wheel of Fortune is 10 spins, 4,400 gems to get 10 spins, and you get a guaranteed 5 heads, which is super solid. Best bang for your buck in terms of gold heads per gem spent. And then the second best is actually 100 spins. So what I personally do is I try to get to 10 spins or try to get to 100 spins. 100 spins is 68,800 gemmies. So I think he's going to be in Wheel of Fortune, so be sure to save up your gems. I'm not exactly too sure when he'd come out, but the fact that he was announced means that he will probably come out within the next coming weeks. Okay, so usually what I do when there's a new commander is that I like to break down and put it in layman's terms, you know what I mean? Like make it super simple to understand. Yeah, I go skill by skill, so we're gonna be doing that. First skill, General of Agile Cavalry, deals damage to target troop, damage factor 2,700, which is crazy. Is this the most damage factor in the commander? I think it is. And then it's halved if secondary, and then reduces march speed by 50% for 3 seconds. What the first skill does, big damage, a ton of damage, single target though, and it is as if he's a primary commander. So what that tells us, he has to be a primary commander, and he does deal march speed debuff. So the 50% march speed reduction is actually pretty big. So skill 2 is Ferghana Horses. Cavalry units led by this commander gains 40% increased attack. While outside Alliance territory, their cavalry units gain 15% increased march speed and deal 5% more damage to archer units. So skill 2 does cav attack. 40% is a lot of cav attack. Like I crit my Sacred Dominion because this gives 32.5% cav attack, so it gives more than Sacred Dominion. And you also, when you're outside Alliance territory, you gain 15% march speed, which is cool. This is a good skill. Alrighty, skill number 3 is the complex skill, Dragon of the Desert. If this commander's troop has not been garrisoned in a building for at least 30 seconds, every time the troop enters combat, it will gain the following buffs for the first 15 seconds of battle. So it'll deal 30% more skill damage, and active skills cost 150 less rage to use, and then after those 15 seconds, it'll only deal 10% more normal attack damage. The third skill, there's like conditions to it. But yeah, if you guys know if statements, it's like if outside of building for 30 seconds and first 15 seconds in combat, you deal 30% more skill damage, and active skills is 150 less rates to use, which is pretty interesting. The less active skill cost is actually pretty interesting, and we'll go back into that when we go into the expertise and kind of the way that this commander I think will be meant to function. And then after 15 seconds, normal attack damage. So what that means is like you want to make sure that you have this first 15 seconds of battle skill always procced, or else you're going to be like pretty screwed. Because like you're going to be missing out on 30% more skill damage and 150 less rage cost. The fourth skill, Battlefield Apparitions. When attacking an enemy troop, cavalry units led by this commander gain 30% increased defense, and their troops deal 20% more skill damage. So you want to make sure that you're consistently attacking people, that you're consistently engaged in combat, because 30% defense, especially for cavalry, is super stacked. Because if you look at cav gear, it's super health centric. So the fact that he has more defense to even out the stats a little bit definitely helps. And then whenever troops defeat enemy troop, some of his slightly wounded units will heal. Healing factor 1.5k. Cooldown 8 seconds. 1.5k healing factor isn't nothing, by the way. That's a lot of healing factor. And I watched Shappy's video, and he kind of compared it to Richard. And we see Richard as like the ultimate tank because of his healing factor. Like you want to chain with this guy. You gain 1.4k for Richard. So this guy's healing factor when killing a unit is more than Richard's healing, which is kind of insane. Skill 4, there's another if statement. If you're attacking troops, you gain cav defense, you gain skill damage, and when you defeat a troop, you gain healing factor of 1.5k. So Conqueror of Kentili, expertise which buffs the fourth skill, When attacking an enemy troop, cavalry units led by this commander gain 35% increased defense, and their troops deal 25% more skill damage. Whenever their troops defeats an enemy troop, it gains autumn wind effect, and some of its slightly wounded units will be healed. Healing factor of 3k, so and cooldown of 8 seconds. And autumn wind resets the rage of this commander's troops, all temporary buffs and debuffs, and the amount of time it has been in combat. So if you guys go back to the third skill, the first 15 seconds of combat, it gains skill damage and has its rage requirement reduction. But yeah, so practically what this will do is when you kill a unit, it'll reset your commander, making it so that the skill damage, the rage requirement reduction will continue on, which is a really interesting effect, because what you see in Rise of Kingdoms nowadays is that people don't really kill commanders off. Like once it's red, unless it's a Guan, you kind of like move on to the next commander. This commander definitely wants to get its resets, making it so that the third skill, which is like, you know, I feel like is going to be the bread and butter skill, is going to continuously proc. So you're going to be doing more skill damage, and the rage requirement reduction is going to be super low. And I think the reason why they put the rage requirement reduction there is because it's kind of like in Rise of Kingdoms, we have this thing called rage chaining, and you really do like chaining your rage bars so that you can consistently pull out those skills. If you reset your commander, you can't really rage chain. I think that 150 is supposed to try to offset the ability to not rage chain. When you're attacking troops, you gain more cav defense and you gain more cav skill damage. But when you defeat troops, it resets the commander, which also resets the debuffs, which is, I think, a underrated part about this commander. There's so many debuffs in the open field. Guan Yu silence. There's like Boudica's extra skill damage taken. There's like, I don't know, Nevsky's defense reduction, CPO's health reduction. So the fact that those debuffs won't stack, although your buffs won't stack, it's kind of like this trade-off. I think it's pretty interesting. So in case you guys didn't catch it, overall, what does he do? Big damage, march speed debuff. Like there's a bunch of stuff here. I kind of broke it down to make it really simple. Huge single target nuke, march speed debuff, march speed. So that's kind of like a dangerous combination when chasing people down. Conditional rage requirement reduction, has some tankiness with the defense, and it has some healing factor. He's definitely going to be a top 3, top 4 cavalry commander out there, and we're gonna go to that later on into this. So we said, you know, what he does, but what is he missing? What would you guys in chat, let me know. What do you think HQ is missing? It's single target damage. Yeah, Mike Raptor, it is single target damage. And that's why I think the biggest thing that this guy's missing is similar to Nevsky, where it's actually AoE. The fact that he has no AoE in such a skill damage centric meta, and especially in these big murder balls that we have, AoE commanders are just so premium. The reason why Liang is so strong is, imagine if Liang didn't have a circle AoE. Imagine if Liang just did 2k, did a damage reduction, did all of this kind of stuff. Like, he'd still be okay, he'd still be pretty good. But the reason why he's so strong is because of the circular AoE that he has, and a second circular AoE with his fourth skill. So who should you pair with him, right? And this is kind of like the reason why I like going through the pros and the cons, is because you kind of want to create this complete march. So he does all this good stuff. Single target nuke. He does a bunch of march speed. He's pretty tanky. He has healing factor. What you want to cover up is this lack of AoE, and to a certain extent, the lack of debuffs. And William has both. So if we look at William, his active skill, it's kind of a weird AoE, but it actually does a surprising amount of damage. 1.5k for such an old commander. And then the attacked troops extra skill damage buffs cannot take effect, which is insane, because like every single new commander has these extra skill damage boosts. Like Nevsky has a bunch. We also have, you could even go back to HQ. He has a bunch of active skill damage buffs. If we go to third skill, if we go to fourth skill, so like active skill damage buffs are all over the place. So William is going to be a really good counter to the current active skill damage meta. He also has, you know, extra attack, march speed, extra damage boosts, But the debuff with his of the primary skill just makes it like such a good commander, such a good pair to have. I would say that HQ and William would be probably my number one pair. It's either between HQ William, HQ Joan, which is what I'm gonna bring up over here. Joan of Arc, second pair that I would think of for HQ. Her AoE damage is insane, and I think people really underestimate Joan of Arc. She is a kill magnet with a 2k damage factor, which is multiplied because it procs twice. It's insane. So it's a 4k damage factor, which is an AoE that hits up to 3 targets. She definitely covers up the lack of AoE that HQ has. So William, Joan. The third commander that I would kind of think of would be Nevsky, because he does have a debuff, and he has a really good debuff as well. Defense reduction debuff of 45 when you're swarming a target is really, really good. He also has a lot of tankiness. He's practically, honestly, Nevsky and HQ are very, very similar in terms of what they do as commanders, which is why I would be really, really hesitant to combine them together. But if you don't have William, if you don't have Joan, and you do have a Nevsky, then I'd probably go HQ Nevsky as your primary Cav March and then try to get that William and Joan up. So this is my speculation, but I think the best open field march will still be Nevsky Joan. The reason being is Nevsky, in my opinion, is still a better commander than HQ. If you go into Nevsky, like every single one of his skills, 2.3k damage factor, you got a really good debuff with the active skill. You have 20% attack, 20% march speed, 20% health. You have 20% defense, so 20% of all stats, 10% damage bonus, damage taken reduction, you have skill damage bonus, trigger skill damage bonus. Like, you have so many stuff. You have so much good stuff with Nevsky, which is why I would rather prioritize Nevsky over HQ. And then Joan is just that skill damage nuke, that AoE skill damage nuke that Nevsky's missing. I think those two really, really complement each other super, super well. And if you're trying to hunt as much KP as possible, this is like the number one open field pair in my opinion, for Cavalry. And I don't think that'll change. But for the second March, this is where HQ, super low res image of HQ, and William with Nevsky Joan is going to be really, really good. So it's going to be Nevsky Joan, HQ William. As I said before, William does give the AoE and debuffs that he's missing from what he does. So I definitely think that the pair together is going to be a really, really good March. One March, Nevsky Joan. Second March is HQ with William and Nevsky Joan. And yeah, this is going to be my new Cavalry investment priority. Keep in mind, this is all speculation. We haven't seen any real testing with HQ. But number one is still Nevsky. As I said, each one of his skills is so stacked. The only thing is missing is AoE. I would definitely put Nevsky number one priority for Cavalry still. Because even if you just have Nevsky, you could put Mehmed behind him. You could put like a bunch of other commanders behind him, Minamoto behind him. So I definitely still have him. Joan of Arc second. Just because her AoE with Nevsky does so much damage. Third, I'm actually gonna put HQ. The reason being is, even though like Nevsky's, in my opinion, a better, less quirky version of HQ, he's still really strong with what he brings to the table. And the only thing that he's missing is that debuff that we're talking about, that AoE damage. So if you could somehow fill that in, which is gonna be my fourth commander, William, he's pretty much a complete commander as well. So the reason why I'm putting HQ before William, I think you could at least put Mehmed behind him, right? Like, I think that still like fills in that AoE gap, gives you extra health. With William, you can't put Mehmed William. I guess you could go Nevsky, William, Joan, Mehmed, but I'm talking about like, I'm trying to think March wise, right? Like, who are you gonna put with William if you don't have HQ and Nevsky's already with Joan? So the reason why I picked HQ is because he's gonna be that primary commander with William. And William is kind of a lower priority for me as well, just because you could buy him through dailies. If you're a spender, dailies are a great way to get William, get him to 5-5-5-1. That's why I don't think you have to focus on William, and I'd rather get HQ, get that second Cav March up, and then fill it out with the William. This is a question I've been seeing everywhere. What about XY? XY is still a really good commander. The problem with XY is that HQ practically does what XY is, because XY right now is just a glass cannon. What he does AoE damage, which is really good. He has his defense reduction, but that's null with Nevsky. So he does like 1.7k, which is AoE, rage requirement reduction. And that's pretty much all he does that's special. Like he does a lot of damage. That's what he does. But the thing about HQ is that he does a lot of damage too. Like my boy HQ does a ton of damage as well. It's huge single target damage new. And even though it's a single target damage, it's 2.7k. I think HQ is still better than XY. But that doesn't mean XY is unusable. He's a glass cannon and he has AoE damage. The only thing that XY has on HQ is that he has AoE damage. So because of that, XY is actually going to be relegated to the third march. If you're running a third cavalry march, you could run XY Mehmet, XY Mina, XY Honda, and those are all solid options for XY. And that is my presentation on Huo Qubing. First time I ever did one of these. I just wanted to do something different. Let me know what you guys think, if I should do more of these type of streams.